What up, Toyota owners? My name is Eric. I own a 2005 Toyota Highlander V6 3.3 liter limited, and I have almost no experience working on cars. I've changed the oil on this thing twice, and that's all I've ever done. So I made this video for people like me that want to do big jobs, maybe don't feel confident, maybe feel like the videos from the professionals look nice, but are they legit? So hopefully you can learn from my mistakes, have a faster job, and feel confident to do it yourself. Let's get to it.
So why even bother?
I was calling to see if I could get a quote on a service for my vehicle.
Roughly $625.
Okay.
And that's $625. I'm not paying that. Now for the guide. So I based all my work off of this guide from TRQ. It was really excellent, and this video is really a supplement to their video. So go watch their thing and then come back here. The only issue I had with their video is they neglected to say there was 3 bolts in the back to take off. They said there was only 2. It's possible this is just my model of the car. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But I'm pointing it out here so that if you go and watch their video, know that when it comes to take off the manifold, there's 3 bolts back there that you need to ratchet off. One other thing I did before getting started on my job was making my own little study guide and tutorial for how to do this. This was purely a learning tool so that going in, I knew exactly what I needed to do at every step and had a good idea of where I was going. I would recommend everyone do this themselves. All right, so here's what you need. Before I got started on my job, I compiled a list of everything I needed to buy, how much it would cost. I calculated that I would be able to save about $400 doing the job myself after buying all of the tools. Your owner's manual will specify what kind of spark plug type you need. I went directly to the spark plug manufacturer, which was the cheapest vendor of the plugs. I'd recommend this. Here's pretty much everything you need. There's the air intake manifold gasket that is on the left. I got extra clamps in case they broke on my hoses. Of course, we have our spark plugs. We have some bolt buster right here for old bolts on those old vehicles. Dialectric grease. We have our spark plug wrench attachment, our spark plug gap, and a socket wrench set. This one here is 1/4 inch, but I would recommend 3/8 or 1/2. I would highly recommend some ratcheting wrenches. I would not do this job again without them, and I'll tell you why later. Next, we have Allen keys for loosening up the engine plate. We have a headlamp, which is really helpful for seeing into the engine bay. The 1/2 inch ratchet wrench and a PVC pipe. This will give you more torque on harder, stiffer bolts. Or you can just use an impact drill, but I don't own one. Having a second car or a friend that can take you to the store when you need to get something that you don't have is going to be really helpful. Lastly, get some hand protection. It'll be worth it. Here I am checking the gap on my spark plugs. Sometimes they get closed in shipping. You use your gap tool, but mine were good. All right, the easy part, doing the front 3. Here I am. I'm removing the cover to the engine. This is what you're going to use your Allen keys for. If you have that impact drill, this will go a lot faster, but doing it manual is actually not that bad. These bolts right here are what we're going to loosen to get access to our spark plugs. I'm loosening them here with my socket wrench. And these are 10 millimeter bolts. So all of my clips have been broken, which might be the case with you too. The genius that replaced my spark plugs actually glued them together. So I had to take the whole thing out pretty carefully and try not to damage the wires. Hopefully your engine is not like this. So this is what it looks like in there, and you can see the top of the spark plug. Now I'm going to use my spark plug removal tool with my ratchet to pull the plug out. It takes quite a bit of cranks, and as you can see, my spark plug is in pretty bad shape. Finally, we get to put our new spark plug into the engine bay. I start by hand tightening, and then I just snug them up with the ratchet. Be very gentle here. Then we're going to take the torque wrench and torque our spark plugs down to 18 foot-pounds per the owner's manual. Last, we'll put dielectric grease on the boot before putting it back into the engine block. Now it's the same process again for all 3 of our plugs. And we're going to sit here and watch me do the rest of them because I'm keeping it real. Nothing left out. All right, the hard part. The first thing you need to do is remove this strut that is over the engine bay, and it is not going to work with a 3/8 inch drive socket wrench. I'm actually stripping the socket that I have on the wrench right here, trying to move the bolt off. I tried using some of my bolt buster. It would not work. I even went to Home Depot to buy an impact drill. They said, you're stronger than a drill, just use a PVC pipe. And you're about to see what happened when I tried doing that.
Did they tell you to use more leverage?
Yeah. Yeah, they did. So that was the sound of me breaking my 3/8 inch drive socket. However, I did buy a 1/2 inch drive socket at Home Depot in anticipation of me maybe needing more torque, and here it comes in handy. You definitely want to use the 1/2 inch drive for this part. Now that the bolts are free, we can remove the strut and gently place it to the side. The big goal here is to remove the air intake manifold. It starts with loosening nuts that are on this bracket and disconnecting hoses. I've circled one of the hoses that you need to disconnect. It's also very clear in the reference video. These nuts that are right here are 10 millimeters. Pretty much everything is 10 millimeters in here. And the area can be a little hard to reach. So here is the other hose that you need to remove, which is on the left side of the engine bay if you're facing it. And then after you've disconnected what you need to from the bracket, you can just kind of lift it up and put it to the side. You don't need to fully disconnect it or completely remove it from the engine. You'll want to vacuum out any debris or leaves that are here so that they don't fall into the air intake manifold when you take it off later. This big hose on the right is our throttle body hose. We're going to want to disconnect it so that we can remove our throttle body. All you need to do is loosen the clamp that's around it and then slide the hose back. It's a little tight in the engine bay, so it takes a little bit of elbow grease to get it loose and pulled back. Here's a better image of the throttle body and the bolts that you're trying to access, as well as some close-up video of the actual bolts on the throttle body as you see them. That's one down there, which can be kind of hard to reach. Getting in here with the socket wrench can be a little challenging, so if you have something smaller like a 1/4 inch socket wrench or a small ratchet wrench, then that's going to be really helpful here because it did take me quite a while to get these 4 bolts out of the throttle body. The next thing that I'm doing here is trying to remove the 12 millimeter bolt that attaches the air intake manifold to a bracket in the engine bay. This is where I really wish I had the 12 millimeter ratchet wrench because the angle is super awkward and it's just miserable. I also cut up my thumb and my fingers a bit because I didn't have good hand protection, so please get that for yourself. I discovered I didn't have the 14 millimeter wrench I needed to take the other bolt out from the back, so I went to Home Depot, and they didn't have it either. I ended up buying a whole set, which I should have had to begin with. Here is the super sped up version of me spending 17 minutes for this one 14 millimeter bolt. Please get yourself some ratchet wrenches. The stubby ones I showed earlier are perfect.
Let's go, baby.
Man, if only I knew how far away I really was. Okay, so here there are 8 millimeter bolts that are going to attach the air intake manifold to the top of the engine block. So I'm loosening them up with my Allen key and my PVC pipe, which is actually really effective. It obviously would go a lot faster if you had an impact drill, but impact drills are like $200. And then I had to actually loosen and remove a little bit extra part of the bracket that was overlaid earlier, just because mine was stiff and I was having a hard time getting it out of the way. Hopefully you don't have to do this yourself, but if you do, it's really not that big of a deal.
There we go.
This is the beginning of my descent into madness. I'm doing some vacuuming here to get rid of debris, just like before. This is where the reference video says you should be able to remove the air intake manifold, but I discovered that in my vehicle, there's another 12 millimeter bolt behind. It's just kind of basically out of view of the camera here. So this is going to be another 12, 15 minutes down the drain trying to get the bolt out. Definitely get the ratchet wrench. And now,
The moment you've all been waiting for.
finally ready to remove the air intake manifold to get to the back 3 spark plugs.
Or maybe not.
It turns out I forgot to unplug the air intake manifold hose. It's pretty easy. It's just on the left behind there. It should slide out without a whole lot of resistance. And, oh, holy shit. Okay. I actually did it. I am so shocked. I had lost all faith at this point.
Yes.
And I am still very far away. Okay, so here are the back 3 spark plugs that we've been trying to access, and for some reason I felt the need to count them out to you.
2, 3.
Next, we're going to go through removing our 3 10 millimeter bolts, doing everything like we did as we did with the first front 3 spark plugs until, yep, that's a broken bolt. Yeah, that is not how to do it.
Oh, I broke something.
Yeah, you broke a bolt, dipshit.
Yep.
And this is why you should not work until you're so tired you don't know the difference between tightening and loosening. Here's a side-by-side of a regular bolt and the broken one. The rest of it is in the engine block, which is not where you want your bolt to be. I broke it off flush, which is the worst way to do it because you cannot use vice grips to remove it. Don't call it a comeback, call it a setback. Luckily, I was able to borrow my brother's impact drill and get the thing out in a couple hours the next morning. Despite having the broken bolt, I decided to finish up replacing the back 3 spark plugs before calling it a night. And everything I'm doing here is exactly what I did on the first 3 spark plugs in the front. Nothing changes here. Here's a side-by-side of all of my spark plugs looking pretty much as fried as they possibly could be. So I'm very excited to get the new ones in there and see how the car runs. Here I'm replacing the air intake manifold gasket. In the video that I referenced in the beginning, they don't actually replace this gasket, but I think you definitely should do it. If you're placing your spark plugs in your car is, 20 plus years old, it'll just be good to do it. It's only maybe a $20 part, so well worth the effort in my opinion. Putting everything back together. Here I'm putting the air intake manifold back in its place. There's not a whole lot to it. This is going to look very similar to how you took it off, making sure that you're lining up everything. Now I'm adding the bracket that goes on top of the air intake manifold back in, and then I'll be adding back the 2 bolts for the air intake manifold as well as the Allen bolts that keep the bracket on. So here I'm ratcheting them down until they're snug, and then later I'm going to tighten the bolts to 21 foot-pounds, and then the Allen key I'm just going to tighten by hand since I don't have an attachment for my torque wrench for that one. Now I'm putting back the 14 millimeter bolt that is behind our air intake manifold, and then I'll soon be doing the other 12 millimeter bolt that is behind there as well. As you can see, using the stubby ratchet is 100% the play here, and highly recommend picking up a set for this job. Now I'm reattaching the throttle body, which is tightening those 4 bolts that I showed you earlier, and slipping the air gasket over it and retightening the clamp that is around that. Now we are reattaching that small hose to our air intake manifold that we unplugged earlier. Now I'm adding back the 10 millimeter nuts to our bracket that we removed previously, and going to snug them up with our ratchet. We don't need to torque these down, just make sure they're nice and tight. Now making sure to reattach this rubber hose that connects from our throttle body to another part of our engine assembly. Now I'm putting the strut brace back. We're going to line it up properly and then torque down each of our bolts to 59 foot-pounds. Our last step is to put the engine cover back on and then tighten up the nuts that seal it in. You can torque these down, but getting them snug is just good.
I'm done.
Turn in the ignition. Okay. So I actually did this job over a year ago now, and I've put about 12,000 miles on my vehicle since. It's been running really well, so I have proof through exercise that I did the job correctly, and things that I noticed immediately after the job was a little more power on throttle, a little bit better gas mileage, and performance. So this is a tough job. It took me basically 2 whole days because of all of the mistakes and setbacks that I had, but I think that it was very empowering to do, and I would recommend anybody that is simply determined to give it a shot.